Now for part 2. This Saturday, the sun moves into the gate 41, and this is the beginning of the Human Design New Year. Now, Ra, who was the founder of Human Design, and Richard Rudd, who created the Gene Keys, both talk about the gate 41 as being a kind of condensed energy that contains within it the potential for all human experience. Think about that for a minute. That's pretty profound, isn't it? They talk about it in relationship to the I Ching and our genetics and how this is an initiatory energy. I don't know what I think about all of that regarding the genetics piece, but I do relate to this aspect of the initiation coming from the potential of all human experience. So let's go with that for a minute. And I want to invite you to kind of lean into that piece. Now, in understanding human design, it's called fantasy, and in quantum human design, it's called imagination. Now, imagination is something that we all have, right? And there's different ways of understanding it. I really think of imagination as our connection with spirit. It is how the creative intelligence of the universe moves through us, right? It's how we operate as creators in human form, is through our imagination. Unfortunately, imagination in our kind of scientific, logical, rational world has gotten kind of a bad rap. Things like, you're just imagining it, or, where did you come up with that? You just made that up. And it's like, yeah, I just made it up. It's cool, isn't it? Creativity. So the gate 41 is in the sensing circuit, which is right-brained energy. So it's creative. It's abstract, it's not rational, it's not linear, it's not logical, it's none of those things, okay? It's a completely different kind of energy. It's experiential, it's embodied, it's sensual, right? It's about how we experience our human life, which makes sense that the beginning of that is the potential for all human experience. It's also part of a very experiential part of the human design chart that runs over here on the left side of the body. That goes from the 41 to the 30 and then the 35, 36. And that is an experiential part of the human design system. Thinking about this, I want to invite you to really unleash your imagination. Unfortunately, we stick our imagination into boxes too often. I want to give you one simple example from my own life. While I was growing up, my brother showed signs of being an incredible artist from a very young age. And in fact, he is a professional artist. He's been an artist his whole life, and he's internationally known and celebrated and, has fans all over the world and all that. Okay, so he's great. He's awesome. And I decided at some point while I was growing up that he was the artistic one. I basically turned over to him the idea of being an artist and definitely any visual art. And then I had the good fortune to meet Shiloh Sophia McLeod, who later became my creativity mentor. And I was in a workshop with her. We were working with paints and watercolor, and I had to paint something. I had to paint something representational, and I just completely froze. And she sat down with me, and I was crying, and she was like, "What's going on?" And I said, I gave this all away to my brother. And I just have always believed that I couldn't do it. And she was kind and affirming. And she said, "Of course you can. Everybody can. This isn't something that only some people have." And as a result, I came to be able to paint things like that. And so I unleashed myself. I unleashed that part of my imagination with her help. But I had put that part of my imagination away in a box. I had locked it away and thrown away the key and never really thought about it. But fortunately, I was guided at some point to meet her and to do her work. And I have been enriched through my whole life ever since. So I want to suggest that maybe you have places where you've put your imagination before. Maybe it felt like it didn't fit in. Maybe it felt like it was too wild. Maybe it felt, strange. I don't know, otherworldly, woo-woo, kinky. I don't know, just something that did not feel like it was appropriate or it didn't fit in. But I want to remind you that everything around us that we have that was made by human beings came out of somebody somebody's imagination. It was created as an idea and as a thought and a possibility first, as energy, before it came into form. You have capacity to do miraculous things with your imagination. In fact, the sensing circle is called the miracle circle in quantum human design. Yet you may need to unleash it from things like Netflix, because we kind of source out our imagination to the outside world, and we call it entertainment, right? But it means that our imaginations kind of get hijacked by those things outside of us. And so we're in a relatively passive relationship with those things that are outside of us that are providing us with entertainment, particularly things that are on screens. I think reading actually is different, but I have a literary bias because I grew up in a literary family. But we don't want our imaginations to be hijacked by violence and by destruction. And this includes the news, okay? All of that stuff out there about what's going on in the world is highly selected to actually kind of titillate you and to hijack your imagination and to stimulate your fear. I hate to say that, but that's mostly what the news is based on, because it makes you keep coming back. It kind of addicts you to making you want to find out what's going on. But it's not a lot of positive stories that we see that out there in the news. There's not a lot of uplifting things that happen there. So you have to pull your energy out of that. You have to reclaim your imagination so that you can utilize it to create more of what you want in the world and not feel that you're at the mercy of things that are coming at you. I want to give you a challenge. If you could make up or design one aspect of your life or one aspect of your community or of your family or of the world, and you could make it up any way you wanted to, what could you imagine could be true? What could you create with this incredible imaginative capacity that you have in concert with this creative force of the universe to help to bring through new possibilities? Because this is how we're going to create our new world. It's going to happen when we get a hold of our imaginations and we direct them where we want them to. We have to get them out of those boxes. We have to unleash them from the things that have hijacked them so that we can then take it and direct it where we want to. I think this is one of the most important projects that we could be doing right now, because if we can't imagine it, we can't really bring it into form. And we need to bring so many things into form now that are different. New ways of creating energy, new ways of healing our earth, new ways of being with the animals of our planet, new ways of growing food, new ways of transporting ourselves around the world, new ways of relating to each other, new ways of caring for our families and bringing our families up into a thriving and healthy and happy world. There are so many things that we need to bring our imagination into. And when you get a sense of that, I invite you to start telling stories about it. We're just coming off of the Earth being in the gate 56, which is one of the storytelling gates. And so we're already kind of grounded in this feeling of the significance of stories. So I challenge you to use your imagination to be creating some visions and stories of what's possible that we can all begin to lean into. And even better, start to share it with the world. I personally would love to hear it. While the sun is in the gate 41, the earth is in the gate 31. Now, the gate 31 is also collective circuitry, but it's in the logic circuit. It's the final expression of the logic circuit. And it's known as democracy or the democratic leader. And I call it the New World Leader in my feminine sovereign archetypes. And I really kind of like thinking of it that way because democracy is so kind of vexed these days. We have this idea that we live in a democratic society here in the United States, but really we live in a democratic republic. And I think think a lot of people don't really know what that means. I don't think a lot of us really know what democracy is. And so I want to encourage us to be imagining, what does New World leadership look like? And I do believe in democracy, and I think that democracy needs to be a part of that. For me, democracy means everybody has a voice and everybody's position matters. It doesn't mean everybody gets everything they want all the time, but it does mean that we take into account all of the different people, and not even just the people, but also the animals, the plants, the land. We start to take into account all of life. For me, those are some of the aspects of New World leadership as opposed to just democracy. In the Lightworker Leadership Codes mini course that I did last November, and you can still go and register for that and get all of the materials there. It's free and the materials are still available. I talked about different forms of power. And one was power over, which we've been living inside of for centuries, millennia actually, where really violence, brutality, force, coercion, power over, the ability to dominate others has been our most common way of thinking about power, right? So there's people who have power and there are people who don't have power, basically, right? The empowered and the disempowered. Fortunately, we are evolving out of that. And the truth is that there were other forms of power before we had that power over that came in. I always like to blame the Romans for that. I think it probably was going on before that. But I think the Romans really kind of cultivated that power over and created this massive empire that we're still living inside of. But before that, there definitely were other forms of power. And even inside of this kind of dominating force of power, there have always been other kinds. So in the Lightworker Leadership Codes mini course, I talk about other forms of power. The first one is power within. And this has to do with the first four pillars of feminine sovereignty, building our own power within ourselves so that we are connected to spirit, that we have emotional wisdom, that we have vitality and aliveness in our physical form and in our relationship to the natural world, and that we develop energetic mastery. All of these help us to develop a power within. When we are solid in our power within, we don't really need the power over in the same way. This is a key aspect of that kind of awakened expression that I was talking about earlier. It's when we don't have the power within that we want to get that power over, and that's where that coercion comes from, and it's where the shadow aspects of all of these different energies show up. But when we have that power within, we have empowered ourselves. And then we can move out into the world and we can recognize each other as sovereign beings, and we can share power. We can rotate power. We can have power among, so that sometimes certain people have more power. They have more leadership. At other times, other people do. We give that to each other. We recognize that that needs to happen so that we can be sharing our leadership, and so that one person or just one small group of people isn't burdened with that all the time. Also, that even in the same time period, simultaneously, there are going to be different people who are going to be more empowered in certain areas than in others. Like for me, I am empowered as a thought leader. I'm not a technology expert. I hire technology experts because I really need that. I recognize that they have the power and the authority having to do with technology. I don't have that. I'm pretty techy, but man, when it really comes to technology, that is not my genius, and I don't even want to develop that too much in myself. So I recognize that other people have more leadership in that area, they have more power in that area, they have more authority, and I just bow down to them and I ask them to help me. Then in my world, as a thought leader, this is something where I feel very empowered about, and I feel empowered to be able to share my points of view and the wisdom that I have developed over more than 6 decades of life. So that's a place that I feel really strongly in. But I don't feel that I need to manipulate or control other people with my expression. I'm fine with other people expressing themselves however they do. I'm perfectly good with that. And I go to other thought leaders actually to stimulate my thinking as well, and to help me break out of some of the boxes that I have, so that I recognize that even other thought leaders also have power that I don't have. So these are different ways that we can start thinking about how are we in the world where we are developing our power within, we're sharing power, we're rotating power, we're recognizing that different people have power in different areas, and it's all good. We just want to be able to understand that in New World leadership, we're trying to break down the coercive and destructive and violent ways of people empowering themselves, so that some people have a lot of power, of usually a small number, and a lot of people don't. This is what we're really unraveling, and I think that this is a core aspect of New World leadership. So while the earth is lighting us up, we can ground ourselves in that, right? We can really ground ourselves in our expressions and our understandings and our experience of different kinds of power. And I invite you to really explore what that means for you. What would New World leadership look like for you as you step into it? What can inspire you to become more of a leader in your own life? And how do you draw in that sun energy to be able to light it up with that, with your imagination, right? How can you tap into your imagination to start creating a story and a self-concept of yourself as a New World leader, or recognizing other people in your life as developing and expressing New World leadership that you want to acknowledge and reflect back to them and support and see how that's happening. To me, this is what we need to do to be breaking down a lot of the hierarchies that we have been living inside of. And unfortunately, still in our subconscious, a lot of those hierarchies are still operating. So it's up to us to be really looking inside and to be unraveling those and dismantling them, taking out the programs that would have us unconsciously work that way, and then using our imaginations to create the new that we really long for. And that we can feel the future pulling us forward into this. So I invite you, while the sun is transiting the 41 and the earth is transiting the 31, that you go ahead and really unleash your imagination, and you give some of your attention and your intention to what would democratic New World leadership really look like. As I said earlier, the Lightworker Leadership Codes has a lot of material that I have developed around this very topic, and I think it's very timely. I encourage you to go and get that. Here's the link right here, and I will also put the link down in the description. In addition, if you haven't gotten the Getting Started with Human Design book, it also comes with a reflection journal to help you go deeper with that material. Both of these are free to you, and I encourage you to go and get that. If you like the illustrations that I've shared with you today, that's really full of all kinds of things, and it'll also help you understand where the human design mandala came from. That's my transit report for today, and welcome to a brand new year of human design.